Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. COSTAATT President Dr. Keith Nursey highlights the importance of social entrepreneurship as a key catalyst in social innovation. Now, he must be proud that a colleague is working to raise capacity in that sector, since senior lecturer in the School of Business and Information Technologies, Dr. Ambica Medine, she co-authored a book titled Social Entrepreneurship: Strategies for Caribbean NPOs Financial Sustainability in Trinidad and Tobago. We join her now for a conversation. Welcome, Dr. Medine. Thank you so much for making the time. Now, I want to start off, please, getting an idea of the gap that you would have observed in your academic leanings that led you to co-authoring this work.
This book actually evolved from my doctoral thesis. I did and completed my doctoral thesis in social entrepreneurship last year. And the gap basically is that there is no text actually on social entrepreneurship in the Caribbean. In fact, social entrepreneurship, which is one genre of entrepreneurship itself, is relatively uncovered. Not much is understood about it, while there is the emphasis on innovation, but innovation on its own will not make an organization sustainable. And therefore, when I looked at social entrepreneurship, I looked at social entrepreneurship from a strategy standpoint. How, therefore, can social-based organizations become sustainable? And therefore, in doing that, I looked at how social entrepreneurship can help them to do it. So the gap basically is based on my work that I have been doing as a lecturer, because in running my class on social entrepreneurship, I had my students go into the social sector to understand how they operate, to examine how they perform. And I realized that the social sector organizations in the main were not operating efficiently. They were unaware of, well, while they believe they are creating social impact, they weren't really measuring the social impact. And they were really, to a large extent, still dependent on government and private sector organizations for their operational sustainability. And as a result of that, I decided to do my doctoral research to see how I can actually transform those social sector organizations, and by extension, the social sector of Trinidad and Tobago, and, well, of course, the Caribbean.
And thank you so much for that. And you touched on a few points well, and one of them harks back to conversations that we've had previously, where it feels as though that level of efficiency that you're speaking about, it is based on the work of many times one individual and the passion that they have. They have a story, they have a why, but it seems that is not necessarily the most sustainable if you take that person out of the equation. But with that, though, you said it's a subgenre of, or a genre of entrepreneurship. Let's go even further and get a definition, please, or working definition for social entrepreneurship.
Well, as I said, it is a genre of entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship in itself is creativity and innovation. So social entrepreneurship is innovative entrepreneurial action together with the use of business tools and technique to create what is referred to as the double bottom line, financial viability while creating sustainable social change.
I like that.
In general,
I writing it down.
Sorry.
No, man, financial viability, also creating social change, that double bottom line. I'm going to throw that out at somebody sometime. Thank you, Dr. Medine, taking that. But I'm wondering, though, and what is the importance of, or how does this work help to address that gap? Because we also want to talk about the fact that there's no text in the main that deals specifically with the Caribbean. So how does this work take that or mitigate against that gap?
Well, so my book actually is, I would say it's a first in a number of different ways. traditionally the coverage of social entrepreneurship was looking at how persons address social issues in an innovative way. But none of the previous lecture authors or the look at social entrepreneurship looked at how to make these social-based organizations sustainable and operationally sustainable. So while you can create and do innovative things in creating social change, and this is kind of like what you were referring to those activists who has this great idea and they have a passion for social change, and they go in and they want to be able to create social change. And when they go in, then they are stopped because, yes, I'm creating social change, but how do I operate and do it in a sustainable way? And in most cases, those activists do not have the business knowledge and tools and techniques. So which means that they go in and they pull their board together to try to get persons to do all of these stuff. And to a large extent, what I found too is that they want to create and they want to do so many things at the same point in time. My research shows that one social-based organization, which may have like about 10 or 15 persons, want to do about 7 different programs at the same point in time. Put this across in a business sector, an organization that consists of 10 persons may have one product that they are doing, whereas this organization, who are social-based organizations, want to do 7 different things at the same point in time with the same set of persons. And in essence, they don't know how to manage all of these things well. And as I said, this was really having gone out there with my students and examined the way that these organizations operate. I understood clearly that, yeah, this is kind of like how therefore can I get them to change and operate a little more business-like? Because when I looked at what's going on in the external environment, especially the work that has been going on in Europe, in the UK, and how these organizations are operating as, well, the new latest buzzword, social enterprise. The social enterprise is in fact the vehicle for social entrepreneurship. This is where the organization now operates with that double bottom line, and therefore they're operated business-like, they're self-sustaining through their own earn income revenue generation. And that's kind of like why, again, I decided to do this whole research, to do this. And of course, my next step of that is, which I said I would like to discuss also, is the work of seeds, which is really putting what I've done in research, put it into action.
And in terms of navigating the academic, the activist, and so having it be practical and functional, do you see, what kind of feedback do you get from your students? When you speak to them, because Labor Day is in the air, do you see things that can be done a little differently so that, yes, there's labor, but there's also a plan of action for sustainability? Because I think many times people think that you can't necessarily have that level of social impact, especially when you have an NPO, a not-for-profit organization, but making money to sustain themselves as opposed to leaning on some other resources, many times state.
Well, this is the fallacy. A lot of times that non-profit organization, because they're named non-profit organization, they believe that they're not supposed to make a profit, and that's actually not the case at all. The definition of a non-profit organization says that they do everything as a business. They generate income, they operate the same way. The only difference between a business and a nonprofit organization is where the profit goes. Whereas for a business, the profit goes towards shareholder. For a nonprofit organization, the profit goes towards creating social value. And that's I believe that was actually the main reason why the registration of a nonprofit organization is under the Companies Act, because it is in fact an organization that operates just like a business, is just where the profit goes. So the creation of social impact they're all creating social impact, but from what I've found is that they don't know exactly what they are doing because they don't measure their social impact. And this is not just for Trinidad and Tobago. This is actually what I found is even in the external environment, not many nonprofit organization, I would say, or civil society organization measure their social performance. And what we are doing now in theory, and in fact, right across in Jamaica is one of another person who I've been working with, Dr. Kadami Naif. He has been doing a lot of work with regards to quantifying basically the social impact. And he's doing that through the work, what is referred to as a social return on investment. And that's how you quantify the social impact. So social impact is an airy-fairy word that a lot of organizations and people use the words without really understanding exactly how do I go about quantifying it. And this is not just for social-based organization, because of course with business organization through their CSR initiative, they are also trying to create social impact. And while they invest money, in most cases they say that's my CSR funds, and therefore since it's and they don't really look to see exactly what that means in terms of real value. Exactly this value that you create outside there, can you quantify it? Exactly
and
what
that
is
question in terms of being able to quantify it is something that we're going to come back to when we return from this break. We are speaking with Dr. Ambica Medine. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are looking at social entrepreneurship. We're doing so with Dr. Ambica Medine, and we didn't realize it was so recent, so we still say congratulations, Dr. Medine. But in terms of that very important point, because people, especially when you're getting money from a place, they're looking at bottom line. How does it make sense? Does it make sense to continue this? Whether or not that impact is perceived or real? How do you quantify? But even before we get to those questions, outline for me, please, your catchment area of studies. So what types of social enterprises or social entrepreneurs you've been looking at? Is it large ones? Is it small ones? What geographical locations they've been? So give us an idea of your study grouping, please.
Okay, so I looked at nonprofit organization, and I looked at, civil society organization consists of nonprofit organizations, civil-based organization, community-based organizations. And I looked at nonprofit organizations, and I looked at nonprofit organizations throughout in Trinidad and in Tobago. So when I went out and did my research, and I would have to thank my students for that, because I leveraged my students through another class that I had to collect my data set. And I looked at both large, I did categorize them just like a business in terms of small, medium, and large. There wasn't a large amount of large in terms of over 50 staffing. So to say the catchment area, as I said, the catchment area basically is nonprofit organization of all different categories. What I did find though is that the large ones, especially those that have been around for more than 25 years, they were the least entrepreneurial. And when I did my further investigation with regards to them, is that because these organizations, because they've been around so long, they were in fact getting government donations. And so basically that their sustainability was really dependent on donations and grants that they were getting. The younger organizations, those that were now actually established, because, and this is something that we have, which is really a gap in our institutional support in Trinidad and Tobago. When an organization is registered as a nonprofit organization under the Ministry of Legal Affairs, they don't automatically be eligible for donations from a company, because they need to be registered again as a charity-based organization, so that those business organizations, when they give donations, they will get a tax breaks. So it means that when they now registered, they have to survive. And this is where the entrepreneurial stuff have to come in. So they now have to look for ways to actually generate their income to be able to survive. And I found that those that were relatively new were in fact more entrepreneurial than those that were there longer, because those that were there longer, because they were guaranteed this funding, they don't necessarily have to be entrepreneurial. And in the main, none of them really knew if they were actually creating any social impact, because they weren't really measuring. Out of all of them, I think I found just about 10% of the entire population were really measuring their social impact. So while they all believed that they were creating social impact, they were not aware of exactly what they were doing, which is again is one of the reasons why with the formation of seeds, this is actually what we want to do. We want to be able to go into the nonprofit sector to show the nonprofit organizations, hello, this is actually what needs to actually happen. And therefore, this is how you go about operating as a social enterprise. And this is the benefit that you can actually get: financial benefit, operational benefit by operating as a social enterprise. This is how you go about measuring your social impact. And therefore, when you go to actually get funding, you don't go and apply for funding and say, we need 100,000, but you said that I would like to get 100,000. Yes, but when you invest in me with this 100,000, I can actually create social value, which could be equated to $300,000. And this basically is what we would like to do, to really convert and transform these organizations in operating that way.
But it's two things really come to mind. Is it possible to have that transformation while the organization is in operation? And two, it also feels as though there's a bit of a juxtaposition in focus, whereas some individuals may be thinking, the story of the starfish, I made a difference with this one, I made a difference with this one. While you may have a company that has the resources, be it CSR or grants or whatever, looking to see how many people can be impacted by this grant or this level of resources that I'm giving to you. But what do you say to that, in addition to the fact that we have about just a minute and a half? So it may be a closing statement from you as well, please, Dr. Medine.
Okay, how do I answer that? All organizations actually create social value. Whether they are large or small, they do create social value. It's just a measure of being able to identify exactly how much you are actually creating and transferring that into a measure of a value, which is the whole purpose of the social return on investment and being able to do something like that. So donations and grants, yes, is needed in most cases, but what research has shown is that the donation and grants, just like a business startup, is used just to start up. Once you start operating as a social enterprise, employing the business tools and techniques, you can become operationally sustainable. And this basically is what we would like to actually demonstrate to the social-based organizations. And this is actually the intent of the Seeds Conference in October of this year, where we are taking 3 nonprofit organizations and we are basically showing them how to go about doing it, calculating their theory of change, defining their theory of change, examining their ecosystem to identify opportunities both for improvement internally and for new programs. And then additionally, we are quantifying exactly what this change equal to from an economic sense. And in doing that, we are hoping by showing real value, we are hoping that the other organizations can actually do that. The intent actually too is not just for social-based organization. Our intent for that conference in October is to bring in business sector, national government sectors, social-based organizations. Let's see how we can actually do this thing together, because change will not happen without the government putting in the necessary institutional stuff in place. change
Definitely
will not
something that
happen
requires
if the
all hands
business
on deck.
sector
And
don't
moving
work.
towards October, I think this is another conversation in the making, Dr. Medine. But we want to thank you very much, Senior Lecturer in the School of Business and Information Technologies, Dr. Ambica Medine, co-author of a book, Social Entrepreneurship, Strategies for Caribbean NPOs Financial Sustainability in Trinidad and Tobago. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, I'm Dike Rostant. This has been In Depth with me. Thank you so much for joining us.